I want to move out of my parents' house by the end of the year.
I'm packing my bag.
And to do that, I need to make $20,000. My plan? Flip gaming PCs. Here's where I stand right now, and it is not looking too good. So with that in mind, I got right to work. In early July, I spent most of my time just glued to Facebook Marketplace, and I'm not gonna lie, it has never been easier to find a deal. I mean, there were computers that were listed for over 1,000 plus literally months ago, now finally dropping down to the triple digits. Could this mean our economy is on the brink of collapse? Who knows? But what I did know is that this might be my golden opportunity, let me tell you. I went crazy. Good deal over there, where's the address? Where you at? Good deal over there, that's mine too. And within a single month, I managed to pick up 6 different gaming PCs. Starting off with this NZXT pre-built listed for $950. And the thing about this pre-built was that I seen it listed for a while now, so I knew there was a high chance that he'd take less for it. And so I threw out my half-core shot attempt. And
that's the one.
It hit. Oh! Let's go, man. And so I went to go check it out, and it worked phenomenally. After purchasing this PC, I spent 7 days vigorously looking for deals, but unfortunately my half-core shots weren't hitting like before, and so I had to look elsewhere, and that elsewhere happened to be Facebook groups. You see, if you live in a larger city, there are basically groups for everything. That last one is pretty famous among the Hispanic community, and it literally translates to the flea market where everything is for sale, including your mother-in-law. And of course, there's a group for PCs as well. And as I was looking through the group's group chat, I noticed that someone was trying to sell their mini PC with the 5800X, the motherboard, the power supply, the case, the RAM, but without a graphics card, without an SSD, and the case was allegedly banged up for $350. Now at first I passed on it, but after a couple days, I finally saw that he sent another message, but this time he was saying $250 to anybody that can pick it up. And I sent a message, and so we arranged an agreement here, and he stopped by my house where I tested it out and pulled out my GTX 1050 to test it. Thankfully, everything went well, and we scored another mini deal. Get it? Because it's a mini PC. After buying these 2 computers, I got them both clean, but after doing so, I still kept my eyes peeled for deals. The thing was, I found myself in a different situation. Instead of buying a computer, I actually found myself selling one. You see, I got messaged by somebody that was interested in one of my listings, and this PC had a Ryzen 7 7800 XT along with the 9070 XT listed for $1,900. But as crazy as those parts are, that is actually not the highlight of the PC. The highlight is actually its size, because this case is massive, man. It was massive. You might be thinking, man, it must be cool to have a massive PC, but the thing is, that is not the case. You see, bigger is not always better, because most people would prefer one that is smaller so you can easily move it around, clean it, have less room to take up with it. Because of this, I eventually had to drop the price down to $1,900, and that was when I got messaged by this guy. And thankfully, he bought it from me and finally got rid of the big boy. In total, this PC ended up costing me $1,490, 6 hours of time, $10 in gas, and that left us with a profit of $400. Not bad, big boy, not bad. After this sale, about a week went by with no action. I didn't buy, didn't clean, didn't sell. It was just dry. So I finally decided to relist this computer with an i9 14900K in a height Y60 case. You see, I've had this computer listed for a while, but recently a client of mine reached out saying that the card on their PC that they bought for me was having issues. So I offered the card in this build as a replacement for his RTX 3090. That left me with a PC without a graphics card, but you remember that white PC I bought earlier with the RTX 5070? Well, I think that 5070 would fit perfectly in this build, and that is exactly what I ended up doing. And on top of that, I also painted the cap on the AIO black just because I don't like the logo just sitting right there in the middle of the AIO. And I'm glad I did, because here's how it came out. After being a bit patient, I found another deal, but this time it wasn't for the PC alone. I managed to find this setup on OfferUp. However, the main thing I was looking at was a PC, and it had a Ryzen 7 9700X along with the 5070 Ti. Now the bad part is almost always a listing price, and it was no exception here because he had it listed for like $1,800. You know me, I love those half-core needle in the haystack Instagram DM shots, and it worked because I was on my way to go check out this PC. Luckily, everything went well and the computer tested fine, but as I was bringing it back home, I decided to not use a card for this PC. Now don't get me wrong, the 9700X is like a really good processor, but it just wouldn't pair well with the 5070 Ti. Instead, I think one of those X3D chips would make this so much easier to sell, and that's the plan as of right now. But man, after taking it out, that card looked nice, man. I almost became the drug dealer that couldn't stay away from his own product. I mean, just take a look at that carbon fiber, man. Those little touches of white. Bro, what? This card is nice, not to mention, look at how thick it is, man. But you know, I had to stay strong and resisted the urges. Talking about graphics cards, now that we've taken out that 5070 from the white PC we bought earlier, we are now left with a PC without a graphics card again. And so I was on the lookout for a card, trying to get like a 4070 Ti, something along those lines to pair up with the 9600X. And that is when I eventually stumbled across this RTX 4070. He had it listed for 450 and then haggled him down to 400. And then I went to go check it out, tested it, everything worked well. To be honest, this card wasn't the best deal out there. I probably should have haggled him even further, because over here you could get like a 3080 for like 350, and that would be similar if not the same performance. But hey, at least the card looks really good, and sorted that card out for the white PC. After purchasing this computer, I received a message from one of my clients that I had sold 2 computers to a couple years back. Back then he had purchased one for himself and one for his girlfriend. But now the unplugged controller method was no longer working on his little brother. So he reached out and I showed him the options that I had in his price range. And in the end, he really liked this mini PC that I bought in episode 7. And he told me that he would let me know if he was interested by the end of the week. Little did he know that he might end up regretting that decision, because the day after, someone messaged me about that mini PC and was standing on business, because that same night he stopped by and picked it up after he took his grandkids to the water park. And just like that, it was gone. So from here, I slowly started to panic. I don't think he liked the other computer, so will he be annoyed about this? What will I do when the weekend comes around? I feel bad, but what should I do? I know.
I may not have a brain, gentlemen, but I have an idea.
I'll find another PC that he'll like by the end of the week. And while I didn't find a PC for my customer just yet, I found a golden opportunity. And by gold, I'm talking about a gold mine. Let me explain. You see, past purchases have been for gaming PCs with some peripherals here and there. However, this one is different because it literally had everything in the sky. As you guys can see, it was originally listed for 1800 and then eventually he dropped down to 1250. So it had a 4070 Ti, a 7700X, which is a really good combo, still a very strong combo to be honest. He included basically everything else as far as peripherals, the Logitech G815, a ton of peripherals, right? Pretty high-end components. I know this headset alone goes for like at least $100, and a 32-inch 165 hertz monitor. This is already an insanely good deal. Now this part went completely past me. When I got there, I was like, whoa, it's including this too? I didn't even read down there, but he included a 4000D case, a cooler, a microphone, and some speakers. I was like, this has to be a scam, right? Luckily, it was all legit. And on top of the items that you saw in the bottom there, I got even more, but more on that later. Because after I tested it out, the next hard part was actually bringing it downstairs. Now, because there were so many items to bring downstairs, he actually helped me out and we took multiple trips going down. And then I clearly remember that as we were transferring them down, his dad was just there in the couch in the first floor just watching television. And then it was probably like 4 or 5 trips. He was like, dang, are you taking the TV as well? And I was like, yes, everything. He was just joking, obviously. And then I finally got to loading things onto my little Scion. And then of course we hit the road back home. Now remember, I still needed to buy another computer because one of my customers was still gonna be looking for one for his little brother. So I still remained vigilant and kept looking for PCs here and there. And then as we were approaching the weekend, a miracle hit because I managed to find, negotiate, and pick up this Lianli PC. But that's where the good news ends, because this PC actually had some issues. And to start, it was just nasty, bro. It was so bad that I even had to make an appointment with the Gooch collector. And then shortly after, the next problem came in. You see, after I finished cleaning everything up, I was like, all right, let's get right to testing because the dude's gonna hit me up real soon, right? And then as soon as I tested it, man, the CPU was running hotter than the deserts of Dubai, So at that point, I knew something was wrong, either with the thermal paste or the cooler itself. And I figured out what was going on when I touched the tube. You see, when you touch the tubing on a liquid cooler, one side is supposed to feel a bit warmer, but it shouldn't be like a drastic difference, especially when your PC isn't like under full load or running for a while. The thing with this one is that it was a crazy difference and I could be doing absolutely nothing. I just turned it off, turned it on, and the water was still really hot. So at that point, I knew there was something wrong with the cooler and had to replace it. But then finally a sign of hope, because you remember how we picked up that PC earlier that had a bunch of parts? Well, if you have a keen eye, you remember that it had a thermal-rise CPU cooler, and this is exactly what came in clutch. So I got it installed, and thankfully it worked well, because imagine I just installed it and then it didn't work. But no, it worked good. But there was one thing that was off. You see the cooler has a Thermalright logo, but the thing about the logo was that it was like off-centered, and this pissed me off. So at the end I just unplugged the RGB in general. And this left like a mirror effect kind of thing. It's basically a mirror, that's what it is. And then with the cooling out of the way, we finally got some solid testing and temperatures. And then my customer texted saying, hey, I'd like to pick up the mini PC. And I was like, oh, my bad, I sold it. But here I have another computer that you might like even more. And to not so much of a surprise, he actually liked the Lian Li PC more than the mini PC we had before. So thankfully it all worked out in the end. But which one would you choose if you had to pick one? I'll tell you what I'll pick. That Lian Li after the cleaning though, because before, After telling me this over the text, he stopped by and picked up the computer and left happy. So mission passed. At this point, I have bought so many computers, but literally have a few listed right now. That is why I decided to finally wrap up that white PC from earlier and get that 4070 installed. The 4070 wasn't the only thing I changed though, because the only reason I waited so long to install the card was because the PC was still missing two front fans. This obviously made the computer look awkward, so I looked in my inventory and found a spare fan, however was still missing a single one. Because of this, I decided to order one from eBay. As I was waiting for the fans, I also ordered some cable extensions, and that is a must if you care about aesthetics. From there, I got both of them installed, and here's how it came out. So this whole episode has been a bit slow, I'm talking about computers, picking them up, and it's been repetitive, but now it's time to switch up the pace and kick up the dopamine levels for the brain rot kids in the back. So keep your seatbelts buckled because this is gonna be fast. So in the last episode, I had a client of mine return an RTX 3090 that was giving him issues. He said that it would crash but was random at best, and once it did not boot for a while. He also noted the temperatures were extremely cool, but I had no idea what was causing the issue. Now recently, I've been having issues with my own PC. This eventually led me to repaste my personal card, and while I was at it, I was like, I might as well open up the 3090. The original seller of the card told me that he had repasted the card himself, so I doubted this would be the issue. But I'm glad I did because you won't believe what I found. When I opened up the card, there was literally a single small plastic that was left on the thermal pad. Bro. This was causing the odd issues, and since then I have been using the card for a month and has worked perfectly. Wow, I just saved myself $150. Now that we've talked about all the PCs, we can finally crunch some numbers, because in this episode we actually made a decent amount of profit, but at the same time wasted a ton of cash because of how much we purchased. So for this episode, the total profit ends up coming to this. It makes us one step closer to moving out. As far as the amount I've spent, well, let's not talk about that right now. Till next episode, peace out.